coaches and training specialist at Freefrom. Also on this call is Tanya Ventura, who is our Director of Service Provider and Education and Engagement. So she'll be in the chat. I love that you guys are saying hello from different parts of the country, so feel free to chat and engage with one another. Today, we're going to be talking about supporting financial wellness and well-being during the holidays for survivors. On this call or on this webinar are survivors, there are service providers, people who are working in the movement. So really excited to engage with all of you today and to share and to learn and be in community with one another. I do want to mention that in the chat room is where you can kind of answer some of the questions that we will be asking. We'll be asking you to engage if you are able to and if you want to. We also have a Q&A box for at the end of the webinar where you can ask questions and engage with us in that way. So I do want to say that before we jump in that today we're going to be talking about money. And money can be stressful for some people. It can be difficult to talk about. It can be difficult to listen to someone talking about it. So at any point, if you need to step away from the webinar, if you need to kind of put us on mute, if you need to, just take a break, please do so. That's totally fine. We will be recording it. So if, at any point you want to pause it and then come back to it, we will be sending you the recording at the end. All right, everyone. And if you have any questions, want to chat with folks, please use the chat function to do that. All right, so at Freefrom, we like to start our sessions and our webinars with a bit of a grounding. There's a lot going on in the world, in your own lives. So we want to take some time to be able to ground ourselves into where we are now, into this webinar. So let's just take a few deep breaths. You can close your eyes if you want to. You can keep them open. That's totally up to you. So take a few deep breaths. And wherever you are, be in a comfortable position. Maybe you're sitting at your desk. Maybe you're sitting at your desk, but you want to move to your bed. That's totally fine. Choose a position that feels good to you. And check in with yourself. How are you feeling right now? And where are you feeling that emotion? Maybe you've been sitting at your desk for a while, so your neck's a little sore. Maybe your shoulders are a little sore. Maybe you're feeling a little bit anxious about this webinar, talking about money. Maybe you're excited and you're figuring out how can you, learn and be in community with one another. All right, so let's do 2 more breaths. Okay. I don't know about you, but I feel much better. I was a little anxious. All right, so today in our agenda, what we have for today is an introduction to Freefrom. Some of you know us, some of you don't. So just giving you a broad view of what we do at Freefrom. And then we're going to go up into what are the various experiences and feelings that come up for a lot of survivors during the holidays. Again, some people on this webinar are survivors themselves, some people are service providers, and just understanding that not every experience is going to be the same. And then we'll delve into how can you create healthy financial practices for yourself and how can you help others in doing the same. All right, so a little about Freefrom and what we do. We are a 501c3, so we're a not-for-profit organization. We're based in Los Angeles, but we work nationally and are looking to work internationally soon. And what we do at Freefrom is we envision a world where survivors have sustaining income, savings, credit with which to build wealth. And we want to provide and support survivors in having the resources to support their individual, intergenerational, as well as community healing. And when we talk about survivors, this is survivors of gender-based violence, but it can also be survivors of intimate partner violence, survivors of any kind of interpersonal violence. So we take a broad view on how we approach survivors because survivorship is different and experiences are different and every experience is valid. So in order to envision our world where survivors have sustaining income, savings, and credit to build wealth, so everyone can participate in wealth building, we take a holistic approach in using a couple of different avenues. So we use technology and we use peer-to-peer networks, so survivors supporting other survivors without nonprofits, without policymakers, without governments, but really providing a space where survivors are their own experts. We do training programs for shelters. So I know we're training some of the folks on this call. We do policy advocacy on a federal and state level, and we have a social enterprise model where we have our gifted social enterprise. So thinking about people, survivors who are entrepreneurs and building wealth in that sense. And then we also work across different sectors, working with asset builders, working with banks, working with governments to figure out how do we create the society and how do we create the vision and the world in which survivors have sustaining income, savings, credit to build wealth. So that's a little bit of background of who we are. Tanya and I are both in the training department where we're working on training and building capacity within the nonprofit movement, the gender-based violence movement. So this is not always a great topic to talk about, but it's important that we kind of frame our work today and frame the space that we have today in talking about economic abuse, right? So most survivors experience economic abuse and exploitation, and the effects can be really devastating. Some of you are survivors yourselves. I'm a survivor myself. Some of you work with survivors, and we understand that money is a really big part of life, right? And it's a part of the healing process, and it's part of the abuse. And we're trying to figure out, when survivors go through and experience economic abuse, what is the effect? And what we found out at Free From is that survivors on average have less than $250 in savings, right? So survivors have on average, less than $250 in savings. And on average, survivors have reported that they have $1,280 stolen from them by their harm doers each month. They incur about $15,936 in coerced or fraudulent debt in survivors' names each year. And survivors lose out on about $23,000 of income every year. And why am I sharing these statistics with you, right? And the reason we share these is because, when survivors experience economic harm and even after the harm, the effects are really devastating, and they make any additional experiences such as emergencies and holidays especially more stressful and difficult. So holidays, they can be, a happy and joyous and family-oriented time, but it can also have different experiences for different folks. And when we talk about the holidays, money is a big part, finances are a big part, and part of the experience of having experienced economic abuse is that these additional expenses can be really hard for folks. So we go into specifically during the holidays, specifically around the Christmas time or any other whatever holiday that you celebrate in your personal lives. What are the challenges and experiences of survivors during the holidays? And before we get into these, I do want to say that this is not all of these may not be applicable to you, even if you are a survivor, even if you are a service provider. These experiences are unique and they may or may not apply to you, to your clients. So just taking that into consideration, and anytime you talk to a survivor or, thinking about it, if you're like kind of going through this and be like, well, I don't agree with that, that's okay, right? I don't agree with a lot of these either. But again, like we have a limited view on what your experiences are, and we just want to share all of the different kinds of experiences that survivors may be experiencing during these times. So let's kind of get into challenges and experiences. So some things that folks may experience is pressure to buy gifts and or spend more time than they want to with people, and or guilt for not being able to do so. I think this is not unique to survivors. This may be, you may not be a survivor and you're like, I don't want to buy that PS5 for my kid, or, oh, my in-laws want me to spend more time at their place and I'd rather just stay at home, right? So this may not be survivor specific, but it is something that people go through and survivors experience during the holidays. Financial pressures around the holidays can lead to rising incidents of violence. As people feel more pressure, financially and otherwise, it comes out sometimes in forms of violence externally to others in their life. And we saw this when COVID happened, when the financial pressures of COVID rose, so did incidents of gender-based violence. And this also applies during the holidays, where financial pressures around the holidays can lead to incidents of rising violence. Something else that survivors may be experiencing is having to interact with harm doers at family gatherings and other holiday arrangements. So this can be, survivors, maybe they have had experiences with their family members who have, economically harmed them. And so maybe they have to see their family member at a holiday, or maybe it's, if a survivor has children with the harm doer, then maybe the children have to be quote unquote, I don't want to say shared, but they have to be dropped off and picked up. And so that may be an additional challenge for survivors around these times. And it may also be that, survivors have family members who maybe they don't see often, but they're asking, hey, how's, so-and-so doing? And they don't fully support the survivor in their experiences and are asking about their harm doer in a way that doesn't make the survivor feel comfortable. I think this is also a big thing for a lot of us, is guilt for not sticking to a budget or feeling like we overspent. Survivors and non-survivors, this is a big one for a lot of us during the holidays, where we see that sale, the Black Friday stuff are coming up, and then we spend and then we feel bad about it after. Going back to elevated incidents of economic abuse during the holidays, harm doers, and these are just examples, and if you have any other examples, I would love to hear them in the chat, or feel free to share them with folks on the call. Harm doers may spend more money than the survivor would like to. Maybe it's on a gift for themselves or for children. Maybe it's spending money in a way that the survivor is not comfortable, and it is the survivor's money. Maybe the harm doer is stealing gifts and or money, and the survivor can be spending the harm doer can be spending the survivor's money. It may be that money that the survivor has saved or earned to spend in a specific way, and instead the harm doer has stolen it. A big challenge a lot of survivors experience during the holidays can also be lack of access to credit cards. So a lot of us, when we think about the holidays, we may be using our credit cards to spend and buy what we want or what we need, and then have a plan afterwards to pay that off. And lack of access to credit cards is something that a lot of survivors experience because of the economic abuse and being cash dependent. So what happens is that maybe survivors have poor credit because of the economic abuse that they have endured. And because of that, they can either no longer open a credit card, they don't have access to loans, or maybe they aren't able to open additional cards, or because they currently have used the ones that they currently have, and they are cash dependent, which means they can only spend what they have in their savings checkings accounts or what they have in cash. So some of us can say, I'm gonna buy that $300 sofa, and then know that we'll pay off $50 every month in January and February. But for survivors, many of them don't have that option. And this is a big one. Dread of having to deal with the aftermath of the spending in January. So we spend and then we feel really bad about spending, right? Or maybe we used our card, or maybe we're looking at our checking and savings account and we realize, now I have to deal with this. So that's also an emotion that can come up, and it's a valid emotion, and that's okay. This is a big one that is survivor specific, is not being able to shop online because there is no safe address to receive purchases. So this can be survivors who currently live with their harm doer, and they don't feel comfortable receiving anything at their home for maybe fear of violence, maybe fear of a fight, maybe because they think it's going to get stolen. This can also be for survivors who have left their harm doer currently and is living from house to house. Maybe they're unhoused, maybe they don't have a safe shelter, or maybe they don't have a safe address to receive those purchases. And during these COVID pandemic times, for a lot of us, shopping online is our only option at this point. And for survivors, that's not even an option right now. Something that can be another challenge during the holidays is feelings of nostalgia of what once was. So I think this is hard because there's so much stigma around survivors feeling any type of positive emotion towards a harm doer, right? There's a lot of like, why would you think that? And they were bad and they did X, Y, and Z to you. But it's okay for survivors to feel nostalgic and to think about, especially around the holidays, like, oh, that part was good, right? And so we need to still be able to honor those feelings that survivors have and not shame them for the feelings that they hold. Elevated feelings of isolation, not having access to communities of support. For a lot of us, you know, around the holidays, we reach out to our support systems, whether that's our family or our friends, and there's, you know, increased isolation among survivors because of the shame and the guilt that they experience. And I say they, it's like me too, that we experience. And I think it's important, especially during these times, to be able to name those. Another thing that we can talk about is having stressful conversations about money with a harm doer or a family member. Maybe they're still in contact with their harm doer and they don't want to talk about money because they know it's going to lead to a fight or things or incidents of violence, right? So it's the having the conversation is dreading having the conversation too. And those can still be two very, you know, difficult things for survivors to go through. So I'd love to hear from all of you. Do you have any other experiences that you have felt as a survivor or that you have heard from survivors around experiences? And they can be positive experiences too, right? Experiences around the holidays or challenges that, and I ask because, again, every experience is different. And these are just some of the experiences that we have decided to put on, but I would love to hear from you if you have experiences that you have heard or felt yourself as a survivor. And you can chat that in the box. And if you, like, in 30 minutes, you're like, oh, I have another one, you can put those as well. I think somebody raised their hand. If you'd like to talk, you can speak. Yamali, did you still want to speak? Okay, I don't know if that function is working, but if you want to chat it in the box, that's totally fine. All right. Thank you for sharing, Michelle. Michelle wrote.
I was going to say, I don't think folks can see that one.
Oh. Michelle wrote, I am getting a good amount of support in a 12-step recovery group that helps fill the void. And that's definitely, you know, whatever community that works for you, that's a great place to go. Dawn, did I see your hand up? All right, so let's get into, now that we have seen all the challenges, right, that folks experience, what are some ways that we can create some healthy financial practices? And we've divided this into a couple different ways. So the first way that we're going to look into is, what can you do now in December to create financial practices for yourself? First, we want to pause, right? Because we just talked about a lot. We want to pause and acknowledge the name and name the feelings that are coming up for you. So we did this a little bit in our grounding, but I added a wheel of feelings because this is really helpful for me. When I feel something and I'm not quite sure what I'm feeling, this may be a really good tool for you. So maybe right now you're feeling happy. because you're curious and you feel confident. It's okay if you're feeling bad because you're feeling busy and you're stressed out right now. You know, it can be sad because of grief. Maybe you know, lost a memory or a family member. So whatever feelings that are coming up for you right now, that's okay. So, you know, thinking about whether it's this wheel, making it a practice to check in with yourself regularly and figuring out what are you feeling and where in your body are you feeling it. And that will tell you a lot. Okay. We talk a lot about self-care in the nonprofit world and when we are experiencing and trying to heal from trauma, but practicing self-care and community care, right? We want to be kind to ourselves. We want to alleviate some of the pressure that you're putting on yourself and the experience that you want to create around this holiday season. So in your head, you may be having this big idea of how you want to celebrate the holiday season. And maybe it's not, you know, maybe that pressure is coming from online. If you're like going through Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook and you're realizing, oh, look at all of these happy families and happy, wonderful Christmas photos. And you feel guilty for not being able to replicate that for you, for your children, for your family, and that's okay, right? And so we want to stop being so hard on ourselves and being really kind to ourselves and saying, you know what, wherever I am right now, that's okay. And I can create an experience for myself, for the people in my life that can still bring joy. Something else that you can do right now is to check in with yourself to make sure that you feel good about how you're spending money right now. We're kind of in the season where we're buying gifts right now and we're wrapping them. So really just check in and ask yourself, do I feel good about this? Do I feel good about how I'm spending? Do I feel good about what I'm buying? And if you do, congratulations. I want you to celebrate yourself. And if you don't, that's okay. You do want to ask yourself, is there anything that I can do now? Is there anything I can change so that I can feel better? And I want to say this is not something that you can change to not spend money. It's something that you can change to feel better about how you're spending money. So just understanding that distinction. And if you're going to feel better by saving, then do that too. That's all good. Be innovative in the ways that you spend, save, and gift. And keep in mind, this is all things that you can do right now. Gifts don't have to cost money, and saving doesn't have to be restrictive. And so to that sense is you may be asking, okay, how am I supposed to be innovative? You're innovative. You have the talents, the curiosity, and the ability to get creative. And if you're having a hard time, you're kind of feeling like, oh, I'm in a rut, ask people around you. Ask your family, your friends, go online. The internet has a lot of different ways that you can be innovative. Some experiences that I found and that I have done for myself is creating experiences and feelings for gifts. So I think there's this like weird stigma that comes with like, if a gift is not expensive, then it's not worth much. And that is so untrue. There's a lot of things that you can do. So you can do experiences, an experience book that people can cash in at a future date. So maybe it's, you know, a book for your partner or for your parents or for your friends of things that they can cash in. So maybe it's, I'll do the dishes for a week. I'll do the laundry. You know, I'll pay for dinner at a later time. Whatever that feels good for you is creating an experience of, or maybe it'll be, I'll cook a meal and we'll go on a picnic. And this doesn't have to be romantically. It can be with friends. It can be with family. It can be with community, with neighbors, at religious organizations, whatever you are comfortable at. Another really good idea is a mason jar filled with favorite. So the way that people do this is you get a mason jar and you write like on little notes of favorite memories together, experiences that you want to have together in the future, or your favorite things about the other person. And really, like, who doesn't want to be complimented and told that they are a great human being and they make people feel good? And, you know, having these really amazing memories and unique experiences can be helpful for people to feel celebrated and joy. And, you know, it'll be good for you to feel good about that. And it won't be a big, you know, cost in the bank. Another thing that you can do is creating a no or low cost adventure in your city. So maybe it's thinking about, and the way that you can do this is think about, if I was a tourist in my city, what would I do? Right? experiencing the city in a different light. And these are just some of the experiences that you can give as gifts, but there's a lot of other different things that you can do of thinking about what can be a gift. And really here, you want to think about your non-monetary resources. And by non-monetary resources, we're thinking about what are you good at? Can you make something? Do you know people who can give you a better deal? So when you think about, do you know people who can give you a better deal? Again, things that you can do right now is when you're buying gifts, do you have a friend who works at a store that they can get an employee discount? That's a big one. Can you barter experiences with somebody? So maybe you do nails, somebody else does hair, and you can gift those experiences to other people as a trade. What are you good at? Are you a chef? Can you cook for a family member? Can you cook for a friend? Creating that experience for people of during a pandemic. Maybe people can't, at least in California, people can't go to restaurants. So maybe it's creating, a personal chef experience for a friend's date night or babysitting for somebody, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can gift and still make it really meaningful and heartfelt without spending a lot of money. If you are going to be spending a lot of money or some money or a little bit of money, think about creating a spending plan for how you want to purchase and make gifts. So again, these are things that you can do right now in December. A couple different ways that you can think about how to spend during the holidays is you can spend from your savings if you have savings. If you don't have savings or you don't want to spend your savings, you can use your credit card. I know, using your credit card, yada, 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 but hear me out. You can use your credit card right now if you want to and prepare a repayment plan. So the way that we think about this is, I'm not saying like go swipe your credit card on everything that you want in this world and everything that you ever imagined. But when you're buying gifts, you are allowed to use your credit card, right? You're allowed to use your credit card and then think about right now of how am I going to pay this money back? And we'll go through kind of different steps on how you can prepare a repayment plan. But I do want to say it's okay if you are, maybe right now you spent a lot of money on Amazon for buying gifts and you put on your credit card and you feel bad about it. Don't feel bad. It's okay. It's okay to spend money. Another way that you can think about a spending plan is set aside, right now you can set aside an amount of money, whatever amount that works. Maybe it's $50, maybe it's $100, maybe it's $300, and put that money aside and start paying for everything in cash. So don't touch your cards and you can pay for everything in cash. If you're shopping online, you can still do this. So a way that you can do this is you can have an envelope or a jar and put in the amount of cash you want to spend. And then as you are making your purchases, just take that money out. This can help you visualize how much you're spending and then visualize how much in your plan, how much you currently have given yourself to spend. This plan also doesn't have to be purely on like money. It doesn't have to be like, I'm only spending $100 on gifts, or I'm only spending $500 on gifts. It can also include, where do you want to buy things? What kind of gifts are you looking for? And are there any sales that you are expecting or that you're looking for? So this is just about being intentional about your spending and not thinking about, I think so often what happens is we tend to just buy as things come up, and a way that you can support yourself is figuring out, making a list of like, these are the people I want to buy gifts for, these are the people I want to make gifts for, what am I looking for, and where can I get the best deal for them? So let's talk about that. If you are spending your credit cards, again, that's okay. Give yourself, the permission, allow yourself to spend, and then think about how am I going to repay this, right? So a way that you can start thinking about repayment if you are using a credit card is you can make an extra credit card payment every month for the next 3 months. So this means paying the amount that you would pay off towards a card, and then in the middle of the month, maybe paying an additional payment. So you pay $50 for the credit card that you have, and then for the next 3 months, you'll make another $20, let's say, towards that card. What you can also do is you can pay an extra $30 on top of what your normal payment would be, right? And it doesn't have to be 30. It can be whatever number makes sense for you, whatever number feels good for you. Or maybe your plan is that you're going to add an additional income. And this is not to say that go out and get a second job or a third job or a fourth job, but thinking about, okay, in the new year, how can I make $50 in January? And maybe that's selling old clothes, maybe that's doing babysitting, maybe it's, thinking about finally starting that new business that you were thinking about, being an entrepreneur. So just thinking about where can I add an extra income? And again, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I need to run 3 jobs and be my own business person. It can be, how do I add $50 in January? How do I add $20 in January? Whatever that feels good for you. If you think, again, this goes back to your intentions. If you think you're overspending or you find yourself spending money that you didn't intend to, create intentions now, right? Again, these are all things that you can do in December. And with creating intentions, it's not about restricting yourself. It's about making a list and creating intentions that make sense for you. So some things that you can do is you can make a list of what you are going to buy before you head to the store. We have this like big joke that, when you go to Target, you come out with 50,000 things that you never thought you needed because you went to buy, I don't know, a toilet paper, and you come out with toilet paper and stationery and 3 pairs of jeans and, a bag of chips, right? So go into the store, make a list before you go. This is what I'm going for. This is what I need. And just come out with that. If you're online shopping, something that you can do is everything stays in the cart for 2 days before purchase. And maybe for you, it's 1 day. Maybe it's 30 minutes, right? Whatever it is that makes sense for you, make those intentions, and then just understanding that those can change. And if you make them and you're not able to stick to them, that's okay too. Something else that you can do right now during December is explore your boundaries and state them to others. And this is really hard. It's much easier to say to do than to actually do them. But really your boundaries are for you and for your emotions and for your experiences this holiday season. And then it's hard to explore them, it's hard to identify them, and it's hard to state them to others. So give yourself space and give yourself, the ability to think about these things. Some of the things that you can do in terms of boundaries are maybe it's spending, less than a certain amount for each person, or creating expectations of how much a gift should be. So if you have a friend circle, then you can all say, hey, this year, all gifts are under $15 or $20 or $10, or maybe we're not doing gifts this year because of the pandemic, because there's a lot going on. And just being able to express that to people can be really helpful in terms of just creating expectations for the whole group so no one feels like, how much am I supposed to spend? I don't know, I'm not sure. So just being able to do that. Another boundary that you can do is say, I'm not traveling, right? I'm not traveling. And because travels are really expensive, you have to pay for the Uber there or the parking and then the flight ticket and then the food at the airport's expensive. Like all of these things, the expenses add up. And you can say, because of COVID, I'm not traveling to you, and we'll Zoom, we'll FaceTime, we'll do whatever, but that's a way that you can figure out, does this feel comfortable? And then you can also think about, there's no gifts. Like, I'm not buying gifts this year, but what I will do is send thoughtful letters and cards, right? And it doesn't have to be thoughtful letters and cards. It can be absolutely nothing, but it's about exploring what feels good for you and then being able to communicate that with other people, especially people who you think may be expecting something from you. So that all comes down to in December, something that we talk about a lot of Free From is it's okay to spend money, right? You can spend money and not feel guilty. It's okay to pay for what you need and for what you want. So I want everyone to sit with that and think about that, because it's really okay. So I'd love to hear from all of you. I know some people are chatting, and it may be that you're chatting just to the panelists, which is Tanya and I can see those chats. But if you want to share with the bigger group, you can chat to our panelists and our attendees of what are you currently doing to prepare for the holiday season? And this may be financially, if you have any tips that are working for you. If there are other things that you want to think about, or you can just think about these to yourself. You don't have to share them with anyone if you don't feel comfortable. You don't have to chat it with us. But just thinking about what are you currently doing to prepare for the holiday season, and is there anything that you want to be doing, right? Creating those intentions. And then I want to think about what can we do in the new year. Oh, Sarah, thank you. Oh, that's a good idea. Using cashback apps for groceries and other shopping purchases. Sarah, can you share some examples of the apps that you know of or that you personally use? Ibotta, that's a good one. Oh, hey, I love that. Got Thanksgiving for free. Fetch. The reason that we ask these questions is because we understand that at Freefrom, we are not the only people that know about money. We know that, as much as we think about, and although our work is focused around finances, that you also, as survivors and as service providers and as people who are living in this world, you also have a lot of really wonderful ideas that we want to, take advantage of and to learn from. And so that's the reason for the questions, is because I didn't even think about using the cashback apps, and I think that's a really wonderful idea that a lot of people, could take advantage of. Thank you for sharing that you're not planning to spend a lot of money for gifts this year, because I think for a lot of us, that's where we are, and sometimes we feel uncomfortable saying that. So I appreciate the courage to be able to say, I'm not going to do it, and totally okay with that too. Yeah, reaching out to Transformative Justice Pod for support, maintaining firm boundaries not to communicate or meet with abusive family members. Yeah, that's a really good one. Paying bills on credit cards and then getting a percentage back each month. Yeah, take advantage of the credit cards and their cash back or their different types of services that they give. These are all wonderful ideas. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, if you have more ideas as we're talking, please feel free to share them. So I want to think about creating healthy finance. So everything that we talked about are things that you can do right now. And then thinking about in the new year, maybe right now you don't want to think about money, you want to spend it, and then think about like what we're going to do about it afterwards in the new year. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what you can do in the new year, January, February, March, is thinking about, you can create goals for the upcoming holidays. So even in January, you can still think about December 2021 and figuring out, how do I start earning and saving, and creating experiences for, preparing for those experiences. Again, if you used your credit card this December and now you have, some debt that you want to address and figure out in the holiday season, think about the payment plan. Again, the things that we talked about, creating an extra payment, putting more money on top of that payment and on top of your original payment. The goal here is to create a plan that's reasonable and sustainable. So you don't want to start out with saying, I'm going to pay $500 every month, because maybe you can do it for January and maybe for February, but is that really sustainable for March and April and June? Something that's really important is you can share your intentions with someone you trust. So maybe that's somebody that in your family, maybe that's a friend, maybe that's somebody in your Transformative Justice Pod. Wherever that is, you want to be able to state your intentions, or maybe it's just to yourself. You write it somewhere, you put on your notebook, you put on your mirror, so that you are able to just see it for yourself and write it down somewhere that you can visualize. Again, we want to create intentions. If it's to increase savings, save what works for you. If it's to create income and to create so that you can spend more money in the holidays, thinking about where you can make more money. Again, what are you good at? Can you be an entrepreneur? Do you want to get another job? Do you want to have one babysitting job? Whatever that works for you. And if it is to decrease spending in other areas of your life, this is going to be unique to you. So don't let anyone tell you what your needs and what your wants are, because that's things that you decide for yourself. Someone can look at you and say, hey, you know, that Starbucks that you spend, that's a want. And maybe for you, that's a need. So you get to choose what stays and what goes. And then understanding that what stays and what goes will be different in different times in your life. If you have your intentions and you create them and they change or you're not able to meet them, that's okay, right? We create intentions for ourselves. They're not for other people. They're not so that you can show other people. They're so that you can create the life that you want and you can create the wealth that you want to build. And for some people, it'll be really good. And then for other people, it may be a little bit challenging at different times in their life, and that's okay. Give yourself the space to experience it and to feel all of that, and then get back to your intentions when you feel good about them. Something else that you can do right in the new year is safety plan financially if you can do it safely and if you want to. So this can be for folks who are currently experiencing economic harm, or for folks who may think that they might be experiencing harm in the future. And some ways that you can do that is to create an individual online bank account that only you have access to, create copies and protect your documents, identify someone or a place that can hold your money and other assets, and to review your statements and your credit report regularly. And there's much more information on how to financially safety plan in our COVID response guide in the survivor section. And we will be sending that out to all of you. So you can definitely look at it in more detail and then share it with other people if you feel like they could benefit. So because we have 15 minutes, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. But really, you know, is thinking about how can you support others in creating these healthy finances and practices for them. Whether you're here as a survivor on this call or you're a service provider or you're both, you have the capability and the ability to support others in creating financial health habits that are healthy, that align with their goals, and that can help ease some of the burdens that come up in the holidays. So I want to be really clear about that. This goes back to why we ask for, you know, your suggestions in the chat box, is because you don't have to be somebody who knows a lot about finances, or somebody who is an expert, or somebody who is a service provider, right? As survivors and as service providers and as just people, we have the capability to support others. And I really, really want to honor that feeling here, because you all have different kinds of experiences that can support other people, other survivors, as they are going through their own unique experiences. So first and foremost, when we talk about how do we support others, is we can't assume that they want or need our help, right? I think sometimes we can get judgmental, or we can want to help so badly, but maybe the way that we support is by allowing them to say, no, go away. I don't need your help and I don't want your help, right? Maybe they know exactly what to do with their money and they don't need any support. So that's the first and foremost, is we can't assume they want or need our help, but what we can do is allow the space where they can come and ask for that help, right? So it's allowing the space and then giving them that option to come to us. If they do ask about our supports, I think our first initial thing is, oh, how can we help them save money, right? Let's try to reframe that a little bit and ask them about their goals. And the reason we ask about their goals is it goes back to, we can't assume we know what they want or need. And remember that each survivor's needs and wants are different than your own. And when I say they, I mean survivors that we want to support, but also understanding that we have our own survivorship story, and that we can't bring our own, you know, biases or, you know, maybe experiences into it if that's not going to be exactly how we support them. Something that you want to think about when you're asking folks to share their goals with you is that there is no good or bad way to spend money, right? So there's no like, if you spend money this way, that's good. And if you spend money this way, that's bad. It's just spending money and it's spending money in a way that feels good for other people. And we want to support other people in feeling, good about the way that they spend and they, manage their money. Depending on, whoever you're supporting, depending on their goals, you want to set intentions with them. You want to offer examples. So we talked about, setting intentions earlier in the chat or earlier in the webinar, and then listen to what they say and what they don't say. And we want to stay away from, again, the needs versus wants, because what can be a need for you can be a want for me, and what can be a want for me can be a need for you, and vice versa. So stay away from, do you really need this, right? That question is off limits, unless maybe they ask it. And if they ask it, that's okay. And in that same vein, we want to stay away from budgeting. I think so often, because budgeting is something that many of us kind of know how to do and feel comfortable. That's where we kind of gravitate towards. And we want to stay away from the word budgeting. We want to stay away from the budgeting worksheets, all of that, unless they specifically say, hey, can you help me with budgeting? Oftentimes, most times, people know exactly what they should, I'm putting should in quotations for people who are on the call, are on like what they should, quote unquote, be spending money on, but that's not really where the support is wanted. So stay away from budgeting. If you have questions about how do you do that, we're more than happy to answer those questions, but put away the budgeting worksheets. What you can do, in lieu of being a budgeting, quote unquote, worksheet helper, is to be a thoughtful, judgment-free accountability partner. And when I say accountability partner, I don't mean asking them to show you receipts. I don't mean like checking in, being like, hey, why did you spend that $30 at Target when you said you were only going to walk out with a roll of toilet paper, right? That's not what I mean by accountability partner. I mean accountability partner is someone that they can trust and say, celebrate their successes of like, oh, I stuck to my intentions, or to be able to say, yeah, I came out with, $50 spent at Target, and it be okay for them to be able to share the successes and the challenges that they are having with their intentions. Some ways that you can do that is to do shopping together, even if it's virtually, to look out for deals for each other, to be like, oh, I know Tanya wanted a new couch. I don't know why I keep saying couch. I want a new couch, and I saw a really good deal for it. To encourage each other and to share ideas like you are doing today in the chat, is to share ideas and to support one another and being able to achieve those intentions. And something that's really, I want to be really specific in saying, is that they are also your accountability partner, right? Accountability doesn't work one way. It's kind of like if you say you have a gym partner and then you're the only one having to go to the gym and they're not having to go to the gym. That's not a gym partner, right? So because of power dynamics, and because we want to be aware of survivorship and how we make survivors feel, and how, as a survivor, how I feel, right? We want to be able to make sure that accountability goes both ways. So that's also you saying, yeah, I spent $50 more at so-and-so, like when I wasn't really planning on it. And then thinking about, you can do this with multiple people. It doesn't have to be a partner, it can be a community of folks. So someone mentions the Transformative Justice Pod, right? Thinking about who are the people in your life that are ready for something like an accountability partner, and then who could benefit from that as well. Share resources. So maybe during these times, it's about Amazon Prime for people who don't have it and can benefit from free shipping. Maybe you can lend your address, if you feel comfortable lending it, to somebody who doesn't have a safe place to send their purchases. If you have additional resources, I'd love to hear them. You can also offer to practice or role play having stressful conversations with harm doers and or family members with whom they are nervous bringing up boundaries. So somebody mentioned earlier that they are going to be creating firm boundaries with family members, and having those conversations are really, really hard, right? And they can bring up a lot of stress. So you can support them and say, you don't have to, but if you want to practice it, maybe over the phone, for FaceTime, or if you want me to look at a chat, a text that you want to send to a family member, I'm happy to look at it before you send it. And then finally, you want to ask them how you can support them. we say at Freefrom, you are your own expert, right? And they are their own experts. And you want to be able to ask them, how can I support you? And sometimes we're scared to ask that question because we know we don't have the funds or the emotional capacity to be able to support them in the ways that, they need, but that's okay, right? It's important to feel heard and to feel that they can voice that need to you. Oh, here's my final point, is to be in community with one another, to offer affirmations around finances, power, autonomy, to show care, forgiveness, and compassion for one another, for yourself too, right? And then to be aware that not everyone celebrates the same holiday. So just being aware that people maybe don't celebrate, Christmas or Hanukkah, or they don't do the things that, people quote unquote typically think about. To validate and hold space for the positive and the negative emotions that they may have around the holidays. So again, this goes back to holidays bring up weird emotions for a lot of us. They bring up a lot of memories. And so we want to be able to hold space and to not shame people for feeling positive and negative things that come up. And then if you think somebody might be experiencing harm, to reach out to them. This doesn't have to be like, hey, are you experiencing harm? But just be like, hey, I was just thinking about you and how are you doing? And just opening up that door for them. So I know people are sharing in the chat of different ways to build community and share resources with survivors. Thank you, Michelle. I didn't know that if you have EBT or CalFresh, you can get Prime discounted, $8 a month. Amazing. But if you have any other ideas, I'd love for you to share them in our chat. But because we have 6 minutes, I want to go answer any questions that you may be having. But I'll send this PowerPoint along to everyone, but different ways that you can work with Freefrom. If you work for, an organization and you want training on how to support survivors with finances, you can contact Tanya. If you're a survivor that's working with an organization that you want them to get trained, contact Tanya too. If you are a survivor, you want to help other survivors in starting a peer-to-peer financial support group. So this is peer-to-peer, survivors to survivors, supporting one another and being their own experts. You can contact people who are seeking compensation for the harm that they endured. So, you can read through these. But I'd love to kind of open the last 6 minutes up for questions if anyone has them. But I also want to highlight Delphine's point about sharing Netflix accounts. I didn't even think about that, but yes, I do it, and it's an amazing, way to support one another during the holidays. Maybe you're not feeling good, you want to watch a holiday movie. Yes, Amanda, we will be sending the slides out after the webinar to everyone so that folks can see. Let me see. Somebody asked in the chat a few minutes ago, what's the difference between listening to what they don't say and guessing how someone feels? It can feel overwhelming to be guessing how my loved one is feeling. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I say listen to what they don't say and what they do say, what I mean is think about all the words that they don't bring up. So if they don't say, I want to save, maybe it's not a good idea to tell them that they should be saving more money, right? If they say, if their intention is, I want to figure out how to create more income so that I can spend more in the holidays, then your suggestion or your support to them doesn't have to include the savings part, because maybe they don't bring up savings because they know they don't have more to save. Does that make sense? And if it doesn't, feel free to anonymously keep chatting and let me know if that doesn't make sense. Let's see. I would love for everyone, I'm going to send a copy of the slides, but I'm also going to send a copy of the chat so that people can take advantage of all of your wonderful ideas, talking about the EBT app, looking on the internet for subsidized housing. If you have T-Mobile, you could get Netflix discounted. Amazon Prime is cheaper for folks who are students or receive food stamps. So I'll be sending all of those in the chat. I'll be sending all of your ideas that you have provided in the chat to everyone as well. But if there are no more questions, I want to say to everyone, thank you so much for coming. I have so experienced being in community with all of you, and to really hear from all of you and, you know, understand and support all of you in this. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is at the bottom. I'll also be sending this out. Sharing access to research studies and journal articles, also amazing. I do want to say that we will be sending you a survey after this webinar in addition to the recording. And if you fill out the survey, we will do a raffle for 5 folks. And the 5 people who fill out the survey and win the raffle will get a gifted box from us. Again, Gifted is our social enterprise. They're all hand products, beauty, body products made by survivor entrepreneurs. And you know, it's a way that we have our social enterprise and support survivor wealth. So if you fill out the survey, it's about 6 minutes. Fill out the survey, and then we'll pick 5 people to win the raffle, and we will be sending that out today. So if you want to win a gifted box, I would say fill out the survey. All right. I feel bad ending this chat because there's so many good ideas coming in. But, you know, love to be in community with all of you. Thank you so much for showing up today, you know, for all your time, and we will talk soon. All right. Bye, everyone.